Hiya folks, welcome to the show. Well, Halloween is officially over, which means it's almost time to start celebrating Christmas. But I don't want to have to wait that long to get into the season. There must be something I can talk about that brings both Halloween and Christmas together. But what could it possibly be? For anyone who doesn't know, House of Mouse was a series that ran from 2001 to 2003 on Disney's One Saturday Morning on ABC. Basically, Mickey and friends decided it was time to break into the cabaret market by opening a nightclub where characters from every traditionally animated Disney movie prior to 2001 gather under one roof, a Disney fan's dream. The series was a big supporter of recycling since it's essentially a repackaging of shorts made for the Mickey Mouse Works series, which was kind of this midway point between classic Disney shorts and the 2013 series. But no one was coming to these for the shorts. They were coming for the interactions between classic Disney characters that we'd always wanted to see.
Maybe you'll meet someone special, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll have puppies, maybe you won't.
You could watch this series multiple times and still see things in the background you never noticed before. Or you could be like 12-year-old me who went through each episode frame by frame and tallied up how many times each movie was referenced. Yeah, I was a pretty weird kid. Good thing I grew out of that. The show would feature performances from various Disney characters, including new musical numbers, one of which they gave to Dodger, which makes this the greatest show ever to exist. Even if the song completely betrays his character from the original movie, but I'll take what I can get. House of Mouse spawned two direct-to-home video movies, Mickey's Magical Christmas, Snowden at the House of Mouse, and Mickey's House of Villains. So I'm going to celebrate Halloween and Christmas simultaneously by reviewing and comparing these movies to see which is better once and for all. Because that's what these holidays are all about, right? Competition! Given the fact these are movies I typically watch once a year as background noise, I really have no idea which one's going to come out on top. However, neither of them have any Oliver and Company references, so they're pretty much starting out on equal footing. So how do you come up with a feature-length story for a show that's mostly about characters sitting around watching old cartoons? The short answer is you don't. The long answer? Let's find out. Mickey's House of Villains is centered around the classic Disney villain team-up we all wanted at one point or another. Well, the last 15 minutes are. The opening sets this up like it's actually going to be, you know, a movie, with the villains plotting something involving Mickey. Then all the villains just kind of fade into the background for the next 40 minutes, and it's just an extended House of Mouse episode where we occasionally cut back to Jafar to remind us he's still here. It's honestly kind of lame, and they don't even do anything that interesting when the villains do take over. They have a really good musical number, and that's it. Well, no, let's be fair here. They do change the sign. Is nothing sacred? The plot of this movie is practically over before it even begins. After Jafar and the villains have taken over for about 5 minutes, Mickey shows up with his sorcerer hat and he and Jafar play baseball. Jafar gets trapped in the lamp and that's it, movie's over. I mean, it is just above an hour in runtime, but I still expected a little bit more than this. Though I will say Aladdin showing up out of nowhere just to give them the lamp always gets a decent chuckle out of me.
Here, use the lamp.
With how much the story of House of Villains disappointed, I was kinda ready for Snowden to do the same. But to my surprise, this is actually a movie. Or at least more of a movie than House of Villains was. I mean, they do play the entirety of Mickey's Christmas Carol, so the plot is kind of wrapped up in 32 minutes, but they are honestly a really well-written, well-paced 32 minutes. Snowden at the House of Mouse is about Donald losing his Christmas spirit and Mickey trying to find a way to cheer him up. Meanwhile, the House of Mouse has been completely snowed in, meaning everyone has to spend Christmas there. Okay, so it's not the most original story in the world, but it's Christmas, who cares about originality? And unlike House of Villains, Snowed In gives time to just let the characters breathe and actually get some decent emotion out of them. It's not much, but what is there is handled decently well and has a really satisfying payoff. Neither of these movies have great stories. In fact, you could argue if they should even be considered stories, but in terms of what's happening on screen, Snowed In at the House of Mouse feels more complete and has its heart in the right place. Point goes to Snowed In. But House of Mouse is best known for its interactions between various Disney characters. After all, that is the show's only main selling point. So, how do these movies do? Well, it's fitting we start with the mouse the house is named after, so how is Mickey in both these movies? Well, in House of Villains, he plays the role of the host. Until the villains take over, his only purpose is to introduce the cartoons. He doesn't even really react to his club getting taken over. I get Mickey can't be too complex. No, actually I don't, because time and time again, we have seen there is so much more to him than people give credit for. And Snowed In shows that. Mickey isn't just there as the host. He actually has a role to play in this movie and his own individual goal he's working towards. They even give some time to let him be emotional. It's incredibly brief, but it's here. As for the rest of the main cast, they don't do much. Donald tries to have an arc in House of Villains, but it goes nowhere. And in Snowed In, his role is to not like Christmas until he has to like Christmas because the plot tells him to. Goofy is Goofy, and Daisy is pretty much a non-entity in both these movies. Which is a shame, because she's honestly one of the best characters on the show. The only thing I can say about Minnie is she does have a pretty funny moment in House of Villains, so I guess that kinda makes her better in that movie.
I'm giving you and all the other villains just 30 seconds to turn this back into the House of Mouse, starting right now. 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, 20...
But how does each movie do at what really made the series special? All the creative and odd interactions between iconic Disney characters. House of Villains has basically nothing in this department. Even the villains don't interact that much during the movie outside of the opening scene. I mean, they got Pat Carroll back to reprise her role as Ursula and gave her 3 lines. Though to her credit, she delivers each word flawlessly.
And a splash of evil?
But Snowed In at the House of Mouse not only features a wide variety of characters that aren't just silent cameos, they all get to mingle and interact with each other at multiple points throughout the movie, and it gives this one so much more rewatch value. Like, where else are you going to see Christopher Robin singing with Captain Hook? This is what the show was at its best, and Snowed In is so much better at representing that than House of Villains, even if the song is definitely weaker than It's Our House Now. Now it's time to talk about the animation, and what's this? A category where I think House of Villains is actually better? Blasphemy. Both these movies look pretty good, considering they are low-budget direct-to-DVD hour-long specials based on a cartoon that is essentially a clip show. Snowed In has some nice winter backgrounds, but House of Villains does actually try to be somewhat ambitious with its visuals, and there's just enough polish here to make it stand out, which basically means sometimes there are lighting effects on the characters and there's some decent cinematography. I also just really love the colour choices, especially when the villains take over. Right now, Snowed In is winning 2-1, but House of Mouse is a clip show after all, so let's talk about the clips. Which of these movies has the best selection of shorts? Mickey's House of Villains features 8 shorts, 3 of which being classics, and the other 5 being from the Mickey Mouse Works series. And Snowed In at the House of Mouse only has 4, but we're not looking for quantity here, we're looking for quality. And Snowed In features Mickey's Christmas Carol, aka the best possible way to spend 20 minutes of your life. I'll quickly review each short before giving my final opinion on which movie has the better selection. Starting with Snowed In, Donald on Ice is your standard Donald and the Boys fare, with somewhat decent physical comedy that drags on for too long. Pluto's Christmas Tree is obviously an all-time classic with too many iconic moments to count. The Nutcracker is decently entertaining and has some great Von Drake and Goofy moments and some nice back and forth with the narrator, but it's nothing all that special. And then there's Mickey's Christmas Carol, a perfect retelling of the classic story in 20 minutes, and is best known for not holding anything back at all. Like, seriously, this featurette goes hard in some places. So Snowed In is looking pretty hard to beat in the shorts department, so how does House of Villains stack up? First up is the classic short Trick or Treat, which in terms of Golden Age Disney cartoons is on the lower end of the spectrum. It has a brief but decent song and a great performance by June Foray as Witch Hazel. And I thought copyright was supposed to be Disney's favourite law. Mickey's Mechanical House has a really unique and great visual design for the backgrounds, harkening back to old school TV animation. The whole thing is pretty well written with a rhyming scheme, but it's not really too funny, more just amusing. How to Haunt a House has no right being this great. especially when it comes to the character animation, as this short, rather than being outsourced, was made in the Art of Animation studio at Walt Disney World. Easily one of the best shots created for the Mickey Mouse works. Lonesome Ghosts is one of the most quintessential Mickey, Donald and Goofy shots that is beloved for a reason. It just feels so incredibly timeless, like this could easily be an episode of the 2013 series since it really carries that same energy and humour. Also, the ending twist is so stupid, I can't help but find it hilarious. What is Dance of the Goofies doing in the Halloween special? Now, don't get me wrong, it's an alright short, but I mean, one of these things is not like the other. I guess the little kid is kinda creepy, but I always forget this short is part of the movie because it just does not fit whatsoever. House of Villains really doubled down when it came to iconic classic shorts. Donald Duck and the Gorilla is surprisingly intense even for the time it was made. It's always weird going back to the older shorts because of how different the characters are written. Like, we all know no one gets stuck with all the bad luck like Donald Duck, but here he deserves everything he gets. This is another one that is really impressive from a visual standpoint. There's a lot of really interesting cinematography here. Donald's Halloween Scare. Wow, there sure are a lot of Donald-centric shots in this one. Too bad they couldn't have actually given him something interesting to do in the actual movie. Nothing too spectacular, but I will give credit to this one. It did get a few chuckles out of me with its visual gags. And Goofy getting confused what holiday it is a cheap laugh, but still a laugh nonetheless. But the big drawback here is this one is really similar to Trick or Treat. The boys get pranked by Donald and try to get revenge, and this short doesn't have the atmosphere that one did. I will give it a point for trying to be a little more creepy though. And finally we have Hansel and Gretel, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated Mickey Mouse shorts ever. It contains no dialogue, so the story is entirely told through its music and character acting, which is honestly phenomenal. This one also has some really great lighting as the colours of each scene shifts depending on the mood. There are so many great shots in House of Villains, but this one easily takes the cake as it has a little bit of everything. Great animation, a surprising amount of tension and atmosphere, some really creative shot choices with a unique visual design that really helps it stand out. Then the finale goes completely off the rails as Minnie and Mickey murder someone and then have to basically escape from hell. My only real complaint is the design of the witch could have been a little creepier, but that really doesn't do much to detract from what is easily the magnum opus for the Mickey Mouse works. While Snowed In has Mickey's Christmas Carol, the rest of the shorts can't really compare to the offerings in House of Villains. I mean, there's a really nice variety in the shorts and only one that I really couldn't care less about. Point goes to House of Villains, meaning it's all tied up. However, after looking closely at both these movies for the first time, I do think Snowed In is the better overall package. While there's nothing groundbreaking about its story, it is serviceable and feels complete, whereas House of Villains takes an amazing concept and basically does nothing with it, even if it does have the better selection of shots and a more ambitious visual direction. Regardless of which one is better, I will no doubt continue to watch both these movies every single year, because despite their flaws, they're just so comfortable and never fail to get me in the holiday spirit. And I guess sometimes you don't need a complex work of art. All you need is a glorified clip show designed to prey on your nostalgia. Thanks for watching, folks. See you real soon.